Hey, YouTube. Hey, TikTok. Hey, guys. What's up, Twitch? Listen, guys and gals. The state of Warzone. We're talking about the state of Warzone, and we're going to talk about the most popular topic in Warzone right now, which is VPNing. And I'm going to really explain what it is and how it works to a degree, not like super in-depth detail, but just a little bit more than most people understand, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about this VPN thing. Okay, let's start with the state of Warzone in the sense of where are we at competitively? What does the competitive scene currently look like, right? Where are we going forward from here? What things are working, what things aren't working, and we'll kind of break down that side. So competitive. Currently, where we're at right now, there's this big problem with VPNing, which is basically delegitimizing this idea of a kill race. This has kind of always been a thing. If you guys didn't know, kill races have always been chalked. This is not a new thing. This new VPN that came out that people are talking about, this is not a new VPN. This is just a VPN that some people have been using, and there are others like it that people have been using to like exploit in kill races. Now, here's the problem with current kill races. VPNs and other exploits to reduce SBMM cause this style of play to be basically what I'm gonna say delegitimized. I don't even know if this is a word, chat. Delegitimized. Sure. Delegitimized by the public. What I mean by this is essentially you can't do a kill race. You can't. Nobody in their right mind can call a kill race competitive Warzone. You can't. You can call it content. You can call it fun. You can even put prize money to it and run a tournament, but you can't call it competitive, because in a sense that we're trying to get to, and maybe this is a professional word, professional competitive, like this is what I'm focusing on. You cannot call kill races professional competitive play. It's not. You can't do it because there's too many like RNG. There's too many random elements to a kill race to allow it in any sort of professional sense. Now, what is a VPN? VPNs are actually used all the time. This is not a new thing. This is not a thing that is only about exploiting. The whole purpose of a VPN is basically to change where your computer IP address is pinging to. This is all layman's terms. This is not super technical. I'm not going to get super technical in this talk, but it changes where your basically IP address is pinging to, which will help protect you should somebody like DDoS you or like try to grab your, you know, where you live or blah, 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 like that kind of stuff. Like streamers use VPNs all the time to protect themselves, right? You can't be like IP hacked and crap like that. If you use a VPN, that's a solid VPN. However, when you're pinging, and let's just use these type of VPNs that are basically changing your geolocation to a different location. So you're going to now start pinging to Singapore, or you're going to ping to Argentina, or you're going to ping to Hawaii or whatever. When you do that, right, you're basically transporting where your home base is, where you're pinging from to connect to a server to a different location. Now, here's the big misconception about VPNs. You are not connecting to a Singapore server for Warzone. You're not getting into a Singapore server and saying, I'm playing with Singapore people, I'm going to be playing with bots. That is not how this works. This is how everybody thinks it works, but that's not how it works, because there is a very limited amount of Warzone servers across the globe. There are like 7 or 8, I think, in the US. There's like 4 or 5 in the EU. I think there's 1 down in South America. And then there's like 1 in like India. Hey, look, chat. Here are all the servers for Warzone. This is actually a screenshot from a NetDuma, funny enough. So here are all the servers. There you go. So this is what I'm saying. If I ping to Kenya, I'm going to try to ping to the closest servers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. These are the different servers that I'm probably going to ping to if I'm going to Kenya, which I guess is like over here somewhere. Does this make sense? So it's a little bit different than a lot of people are thinking. So if I go, oh, I'm going to ping to Hawaii, then that means the servers that I'm going to be connecting to are still right here. West Coast, USA. Maybe you go over here or Oceania, depending. But let's say I ping to India, right? And I say, okay, I'm pinging to India. That means I'm only going to connect to this server or this server. Well, that's not true either, because ultimately it depends on when you're trying to connect to a match and how many people are trying to connect to a match at the same time as you and how many people are active on that server. There's also a thing called basically like when servers are super underloaded, they won't fill lobbies. And so they're going to push you to other servers. So you might ping to India, but you still might connect to West Coast servers in the US. Does this make sense? So essentially I'll go here and I might ping to this one. No match can be found here, so I'm going to ping to this one. No match can be found there. I might ping over here, or vice versa, or whatever like that. So this is what a VPN does. This is what makes kill races, you know, basically unattainable, or you can't play them, is because every single time you change one thing about the way you search for a match, you're diluting the power of SBMM. And so if I'm going to sit here in India and I skip from this server to this server to this server, I'll probably, even though I'm in East Coast lobbies in the US, I'm probably going to be in more bot lobbies because I've skipped so many steps that there's only a limited amount of people that they can actually put me with. So VPNs, change geolocation ping to protect or exploit SBMM. I guess I'll say protect IP or exploit SBMM. We'll go with that. So here's the next problem with competitive Warzone. 2v2s. This is what everybody's loving right now. Oddmans can also fall into this. 2v2s. If you guys don't know what this is, you know, basically two pairs of teams, or a pair of teams, two players on each team load into the same lobby, public lobby, right? Quads, and compete for kills. So in an ideal world, this fixes the VPN problem, because everybody's in the same lobby. However, this still goes back to this professional competitive like brand. This is what we're aiming for. If this is the goal, public matches in a general sense cannot be used, because what have you watched a 2v2, right? This is what happens in a 2v2. You run into hackers, you run into stream snipers, you have to reset because of, you know, exploiters glitching under the map. There's 1,000 reasons that public matches don't work in 2v2s, and players are starting to realize that they're not worth their time. These events last like 9 hours for a basic bracket, plus or minus. So where do we go from here? If we've talked about kill races, we've talked about 2v2s, there's really only one other place you can go, right? And that's private matches. When you get into the private match scene, now we've talked about the other two. Here's the issues with private matches, right? So private match, if you guys know, everybody loads in, you know, everyone loads into same custom lobby, right? So here's the issues with private matches right now. Again, going back to this whole brand or goal of professional competitive Warzone, private matches right now, viewers think, or I'll say viewers perception. Wow, I'm having trouble spelling. Viewers' perception is that it's too slow. And this whole idea of changing viewer perspective and expectations for a competitive battle royale is extremely important. So there's two different routes you can go with this, right? You can, exactly what Mick said, you can incentivize faster movement / fights, or kills worth more, right? What's up, Hydro? What's up, Cletus? Like, these are the different types of things, right? You can incentivize this. This is one option. You can say, okay, we're going to do private match lobbies, but we're going to incentivize high-paced or fast-paced action to cater to the viewers' expectations of a competitive battle royale. Totally fair. Personally, I'm actually, the more I've thought about this, the more I've broken this down, and this is maybe a little bit of a hot take, I think there is a case to be made for option 2. Okay? And it's changing viewer perception of what is a battle royale competitive scene. Okay, now this is really difficult. I'm basically saying I need to, or you need to, or the competitive Warzone scene needs to change a viewer's perspective of what to expect when you're watching competitive Warzone. The reason I say this is really important. So let me take an example from what I'll call like real world sports, like sporting events that are currently like well established. Esports is still in its infantile stages, right? You're like really new, regardless of how long we've been having, you know, League of Legends pros or a Halo or anything like that, right? That's esports in a general sense is new. And the battle royale scene, Mick just said it, is insanely new, and viewer expectations can still be molded and changed. If I said, hey, we're gonna go change the way the NBA is played right now to a completely different game, like nobody's gonna go for that. When I say changing the viewer perception of what is important or what is a battle royale competitive scene, what I mean by that is this. Every event that is happening right now is focused on the fast-paced action. You go over to the casters of any larger event, and they'll tune in, right, to somebody that is camping, and they will say, okay, they're camping out in this house. We're going to come back to them and see where they're at later. Let's go watch this fight happening. That is totally fair. I think that's incredibly entertaining. But I would argue kill races and the 2v2s and all that is content forward, not competitive forward, right? As a viewer, you want to watch that content. That is not really fair competition. And so if we go competition forward for Warzone and the state of what I will call professional competition in Warzone, it's going to have to be private matches, but it's got to be emphasized by the professionalism of casters, their knowledge of the game, how the event is organized and prepared, right? And the way it is presented to the public. Because in all reality, what is a battle royale? What is it, right? It is trying to be the last person standing. I'm not saying we don't have kill incentives in private matches, but what I am saying is this. If we had a caster mode in private matches, that's the only thing they added in the next update, right? Casters, the expectation for a caster to be analytical and breaking down movement and rotations, level of a caster, the what I'll call barriers to entry to be a good caster would skyrocket, because every single tournament right now from the caster's perspective for Warzone is some of the easiest casting in the book. And so when you present an event that is a private match event, right, without a spectator or commentator or caster viewpoint in the actual game, like the CDL has, like multiplayer has, without that, we as casters can only do so much with being super analytical about how teams are rotating, because we can only see their perspective for whenever we decide to tune into those teams. But as a caster, this is why I get so butthurt when I tune into a massive Warzone tournament that's $100,000 on the line, and even if it's not a kill race, right, even if it's a freaking, you know, a 2v2 or whatever, but the casters take everything so casually and sit back and just go, oh, this person's not fighting, so we're gonna switch over to this person and we're gonna watch them fry a lobby, and they're just talking about their cars or the, you know, the cake that they had the other day. Like, that's all fine and good, and you want some personality in your casting, but when you don't treat it as a professional event and you don't give it the professional sense of color commentary and play-by-play commentary where you're breaking down the analytical like reason why these teams are doing certain things, nobody else is going to treat it professionally. And when you get into a private match setting, certainly no one's going to take it any sort of seriously. even though that is the only way you can have a serious event. And I think ultimately what we're going to need is what we talked about yesterday, which is transition periods or events. I'll call them transition periods or transition events. These events are what you guys are mentioning right now, of like incentivizing kills, like the kill multiplier. I'm not sure it's the answer for the longevity of competitive Warzone, but it is a perfect transition period event or rule set for these events. So more transitional events would be like the $7,500 tournament we brought up. Somebody brought this up without even me saying that I was making this tournament. They said, you know, we should have a good transition, event or transition period for these events to help push these events further and show that there are like some content opportunities in it. Would be, what if we had a Warzone professional paired up with a, with a content creator and they played together in that private match tourney? Like, that would be amazing. And I was like, June 19th, everybody tune in. We're going to have a grand old time. Content creator plus pro. The next piece of this puzzle I think is also important to say is that one of the main issues with private matches, if you are watching one player, if you say, okay, I am watching a tournament, right, and I only watch Aiden is the person I watch every time I watch Warzone. He's the only person I watch. So instead of watching a caster POV and watching the caster like presentation of the event, I'm just gonna watch Aiden's perspective in this event. Well, if you're used to just watching Aiden fry kill race lobbies and he goes into a private match and plays really competitively like he usually does, besides the charity tournament where they fried everybody in the lobby by just like W keying, you're gonna watch a very slow and boring gameplay. But my whole point is that ideally, viewers for private match tournaments should watch the caster and event perspective, which will create not only levity, not only analytical breakdowns, not only color commentary, not only play-by-play, but also just an event that people enjoy watching because of the presentation of that event. I think that's super important, specifically for private match lobbies. Like, we got to step up the production game 100%. There's so much more that we can add to this, but transition period and events is huge. But also, I think most of what we all decided last night was that you can't really expect competitive professional Warzone to be 150 people in a private match lobby. You can't. You're gonna have to expect a smaller lobby. And so here's the question. The question is, do we have a new map for competitive Warzone? And this is super interesting, and this kind of goes back to PUBG. This kind of goes back to Apex and things like that, where you have a ranked mode or a competitive mode that is specific to a certain map or a certain map at that time. Apex is rotating maps, but I think it would be really, really interesting if we had, okay, here's our pubs matches, and you can choose between these 3 different maps. Like, you can go play the original map, you can go play this new snow map, you can go play this new desert map, screw it, whatever, right? Like, you have 3 different maps to choose from in pubs. But if you're playing ranked or you're playing competitive, tournament style or whatever, it's on a very specific map. In my opinion, that map should be a little bit smaller, right? So you're incentivizing faster paced movement with maybe a 90-person lobby or a 70-person lobby or a 100-person lobby or whatever it is. Something that's smaller and more manageable, and less chaotic, right? And so what if we had here's the competitive map for Warzone for the next year. Here's the map, whether it's the old map, whether it's the new map, whether it's the old map with different zone timers, whether, there's a lot you can get into with the customization side, but I think that is also a great idea, is like one competitive map. I think that's super important. The next question is, because we are really talking about the state of Warzone. This is the professional competitive side, which is a little bit of a summary of what we talked about in the Twitter space last night. But the next part is SBMM, and what is it and where is it going? What is it worth it? Is it good? Is it bad? Like, blah, blah, blah. And I'd love to hear like some of y'all's opinions if you have them on SBMM, because SBMM is super misconstrued. It's technically a made up term for what we have in Warzone. This is basically made up by the public. It's been a word that's been used in the video game industry for a really long time. But in terms of Warzone, they've never stated, hey, we have SBMM, we have skill-based matchmaking, because in all reality, it's not really even skill-based matchmaking. It's really not, right? It's really about like the major contributing factors to SBMM currently in Warzone is really time in. Do you know what piece of the puzzle, and a lot of this is conjecture and based on the limited amount of research that I've been able to do, but the largest piece of the puzzle for skill-based matchmaking, or how tight that skill-based matchmaking is when you load into a game, is one of the major contributing factors is time in. The amount of time you've played in the game is crucial for whether or not you're getting, you know, very strictly decided skilled lobbies or not skilled lobbies. Time in. So for instance, what is the main way you exploit SBMM? New account. Friend of mine, friend of the stream, Imrags. If you guys know who Imrags is, he got hacked or something like that and lost his account. He had to make a brand new account just like anybody else would. People that cheat, you know, they make new accounts and things like that. I think his KD over the last 2 weeks has been like 15. It's a brand new account. They don't have data on him, and so they throw him into a lot of other new account lobbies, and you just fry everybody, because on average a new account is going to be terrible, because the average KD of a Warzone player across the entire nation is under 1.0. You guys, like, in an overall data sense, if you get thrown in with an average player, you're going to fry that lobby if you're an above average player. Now, is it good? Is it bad? Ultimately, SBMM makes sense in any game, period. I mean, I don't think you can really argue that there shouldn't be any sort of skill-based matchmaking if you are a company's perspective, because you got to think of the like return on income that Warzone gets. They are focusing on the public scene, not any sort of competitive scene, not the highest skilled players. They're not focusing on, if you've got a bell curve, right? You got a bell curve of players, and the competitive players are that last 2% on the far right side of how that bell curve evens out. They're not going to focus on the 2%. They're going to focus on the 98%, because that's where 98% of their monies are, right? So they're going to focus on the public players. So SBMM is fantastic for public match players, for people that just go out and have fun. You need SBMM, or you're going to get trashed on by, you know, one of these larger people that good players that pop into your lobby. So SBMM is crucial for a game like Warzone. It just straight up is. Now, what could help fix this a little bit? The answer is a ranked mode. People have talked about a ranked mode for a long time. If you had a ranked mode in Warzone, you would have ranked would be you know, high elo, or not high, but elo driven you know, matchmaking. And then I think this is the crucial thing. If you go to like Apex, their public matches are still have SBMM in them. It's just a lot less stringent, right? So pubs, SBMM loosened is what I'll say. However, I think here's the question about whether or not ranked in Warzone makes sense. This is the issue with this is twofold. Number one, there's so many more issues up here with hackers and things that this is going to be tough. It's going to be tough to perform well and not get a ton of flack for. And number two, you have to assume that obviously Activision has all of the data. They have every piece of data that we have, plus 1,000 times more. They know what a ranked mode would do to their game, and there's a very specific reason why they're not doing that. You know what I mean? Like, you got to assume, like, whenever you're taking into account these different things and conjecturing about what's good and what's not good for the game, you do have to assume that Activision knows more than you. And ranked mode could have been implemented day one if they really wanted it to. There's ranked modes in thousands of other games. It's really easy to implement. They have all of the, you know, all of the data that they need. They could have implemented a ranked mode if they wanted to, but I think they were trying to do something very specific with Warzone, which is cater to a public match player, which is what they're doing. And so you know, from a Warzone or Activision, Blizzard, or whatever you want to say's perspective, any change that they make, any change that they make to the current game, especially a large change like adding a ranked mode, you've got to decide, okay, how is this going to affect our bottom line? And personally, I don't think it changes their bottom line at all. How is that going to change their bottom line? You think it's actually going to bring in new players to the game? No way. It's not going to actually make people buy more skins for the game? No way. I think people would definitely play it, but it's going to be the same players that are already playing right now. So why do they need to change it? So they're just printing money right now. And if they make a large change that gets a ton of flack, maybe that hurts their bottom line. So at this point, if they're killing it, they have an ungodly amount of players playing it. Why would they change anything? I think that's my talk for today. What do you guys think? Did you like this kind of thing? Obviously, I have a lot of thoughts. A lot of it is a little bit of repetition for a lot of things. But for me and my people, Mixmaster included, I, as a content creator, want a ranked mode. I, as a caster, want customization options for private matches. I, as a competitor, at heart, not in all reality, want a fair, professional scene. Activision, and we'll use Activision Blizzard, I guess, as a company with returns they want to hit, want money. Our what we want does not line up. It doesn't line up, at least not right now. And maybe, and this is maybe, and this is a stretch of a maybe, this is a hopefully, right? Hopefully, eventually, this right here, money, lines up with some of these wants and needs that we have. That's the hope. Makes sense? Hey, look, I really enjoyed today's talk. I think this has been a blast, and there's so much more you could talk about. But Warzone's been around for a year, and it's going to be around for even longer than that.